One of the most exciting and talented prospects in the UFC just made a big statement to the welterweight division this past weekend at UFC Apex 100. I'm talking about Carlos Prates, who KO'd Neil Magny in vicious fashion to win his first main event in the first round. He landed not even a square shot. It was a glancing blow off of Neil Magny's temple, or maybe it was behind his ear. Carlos Prates has solidified himself as one of the prospects to look out for in the UFC. He's somebody that I think could be a future champ. We have a lot of stars that are on the verge of retiring, and that has me thinking about the next generation of UFC stars. Who's going to be carrying the torch going forward once the biggest stars of today and yesterday are gone? Dustin Poirier, Conor McGregor, John Jones, Charles Oliveira, Alex Pereira. Who are going to be the big UFC headliners once the guys that we know and love right now are gone? So in this video, I'm going to be talking about my top 5 prospects that I'm looking out for going into next year. So this is the current best 5 prospects in the UFC. I'm Wyatt, and this is Fight Society. Before we get into the video, guys, please make sure to like, subscribe, drop a comment down below, all that good YouTube stuff. It really helps me out a lot. If you want access to extra content and you want to support the channel further, click the link down below or the join button on our channel homepage to become a channel member today. Thank you very much. Back to the video. All right, guys, so my top 5 prospects, my personal top 5 prospects in the UFC going into 2025 based on their fight style, their aura, their talent, their chance to become champion, their story, their lore, all of that. These are my top 5 UFC prospects headed into 2025. First off, we have Carlos Prates, who I talked about at the beginning of this video. He just won his first UFC main event when he KO'd Neil Magny in the first round at UFC Apex 100. Look, Carlos Prates is nasty. He's 21-6 on an 11-fight win streak, meaning he was actually 10-6 at one point, which is crazy. Now he's 21-6, 11-fight win streak. He came into the UFC this year. He got his contract on the Contender Series in August of 2023, and now here in 2024, he has 4 KO TKOs, but they're all scored as KOs. He has 4 KO finishes in the span of 9 months in 2024. He started the year in his UFC debut against Trevin Giles with a KO in the second round. And then he followed that up at UFC Louisville against Charlie Radke on the Jared Cannonier versus Nassourdine Imavov card with the super nasty knee to the body shot, totally crumpled Chuck Buffalo, who is a talented prospect in himself and could very well end up being a ranked welterweight at some point as well. He followed up that with a KO of Li the Leech Jingliang in Australia on the DDP Israel Adesanya card. And he got a KO there, and then that was in the second round. And now here we are this past weekend at UFC Apex 100 with another KO of Neil Magny. He's made $200 grand this year in performance bonuses alone because of these KOs. Carlos Prates, he fought in one championship. He fought in Glory Kickboxing. He had over 100 Muay Thai fights before he started his MMA career. His experience is off the charts. He's only 31 years old, so he's primed to make a run at a title and become a champ in the next year and a half, 2 years. I think he's probably, especially with how exciting he is and how much the fans are getting behind him, I think he's probably 2 wins from a title shot, maybe like a Jeff Neal, and then a top 5 guy, and then title shot, something like that. Carlos Prates has got insane Muay Thai. His takedown defense was really impressive against Neil Magny in the early part of this fight. His left hand is an absolute piston. He's got that touch of death that puts people down. And his movement and poise in the cage is so impressive. His movement and just the way he's so confident. He doesn't seem like he's worried about a thing in there. It kind of reminds me of Prime Anderson Silva. Now, Carlos Prates is personally who I'm most excited for, and I have another prospect at 170 in my top 5. Maybe they fight for a belt one day. But my number 1 prospect going into 2025 is Carlos the Nightmare Prates. Now, moving on from there to another fighter that is in the welterweight division who is one of my favorite fighters. After he beat Kevin Jousset at UFC Paris, he shot up my list in terms of favorite fighters. I love this guy's style. He's aggressive. I like him on the mic. I like his promos. He seems like a cool guy, and he's really good. Bryan Battle, okay? Bryan Battle out of Charlotte, North Carolina, and he is coming off of a win over Kevin Jusay. Before that, he had his last 2 fights. He had the Ange Lusa, where he thought Ange Lusa faked an eye poke to get out of the fight. And he said, "You're a pussy, you know that? I was whooping your ass." Follows that up 6 months later in Paris. TKOs Kevin Jusay in the second round, who is a French guy. Trains in New Zealand at City Kickboxing, but he's a French guy. The legendary, I know y'all didn't think the Butcher was going to lose in a fist fight to a French dude. And now he has his first high-level matchup, not high-level matchup, but near the rankings type of matchup in Randy Brown. And that's taking place at UFC 310. We'll see if there's a new UFC welterweight championship fight on top of that card with Bilal Muhammad pulling out. Bryan Battle versus Randy Brown, I assume, is going to be on the main card of that event. So Brian Butcher, really just a dog, can get it done in multiple ways. He has 4 submission wins, 4 KO wins, 5 submission wins, and 2 decision wins. He's never been KO'd. He lost a decision and a submission. The submission was very, very early in his career. And then he lost to Rinat Fakhretdinov, who is a reputable welterweight prospect in himself. Now, this is somebody to look out for at 170. You may have seen the video that I just did that came out before this one about how good the future of welterweight is. And Bryan Battle, in my opinion, is a big part of that future. Moving on from there to the next prospect that I think everyone should be looking out for going into 2025 at 135 pounds, 26-year-old Payton Talbott. Really, truly unique fight style, explosive fight style, creative fight style. This is a guy, I know the fans talk about him a lot, and he has Full Violence's Full Push behind him now. Full Violence being a very large Instagram page related to MMA and combat sports. They're doing content with Payton Talbott. He's getting the full push, okay? There is a machine behind Payton Talbott to a certain degree, and I get it. He's a unique guy, skateboarder, interesting tattoos, crazy sick fight style. He did cut his hair, so like minus 500 aura. He's nasty. He came into the UFC. He's had 3 wins in the UFC. He submitted Nick Aguirre in the 3rd round with a rear naked choke. And then he absolutely whooped on Cameron Simon, who's a fantastic bantamweight prospect in himself. Maybe Cameron Simon's a little undersized and should be at flyweight, but put the hands, knees, feet, and elbows on him for a TKO win in the 2nd round at the Apex. That was a nasty one. And then at his last fight, against Giannis Gamori, who's not in the UFC anymore, he KO'd Giannis Gamori at UFC 303 in 19 seconds, and now he is turning around for probably his first real test at UFC 311, which Sherdog here says that it's in the Honda Center in Anaheim, but I saw that they are rumored to be looking to do the Intuit Dome in Los Angeles. It's the Clippers' new arena. But he's fighting Raul Barcelos, who 18-5, he's been around the block. He's been in the UFC for a long time. I think he has over 15 UFC fights. I think he has he has about 10 UFC fights dating back to 2018. And he's 37 years old. And some people might look at Raul Barcelos and be like, oh yeah, another layup for Payton Talbott. But he's an experienced guy. And I know that youth usually wins, especially in the lighter weight classes. But the experience is something that's going to be a big test. You know, the crafty veteran like Raul Barcelos is a really good test for Payton Talbott right now. Moving on from there, another 135-pound prospect who was absolutely shoved down our throats at first, and then he lost to Christian Rodriguez, but now he's back with a submission win. He's actually won 3 in a row since his loss to Christian Rodriguez, who missed weight. That's Raul Rosas Jr. In 2024, he beat Ricky Tercios by submission, and then he beat Aochi Kiling at UFC 306 at the Sphere, Noche UFC. The reason that I include Raul Rosas here is because he is young. He's 20. He's big for the weight class, so he could maybe possibly muscle these guys around, but eventually he's going to have to move up. He's 20. He's going to have to move up in weight for sure. He's going to keep growing. 35 is not going to be achievable for him at some point. Raul Rosas I really like because he's a very aggressive grappler that actually pursues the finish. You have a lot of these grapplers from the Caucasus Mountains region, such as Dagestan and Georgia and stuff like that. They try to game the system and win on points via boring top control. People like Raul Rosas Jr., he's like a little Charles Oliveira in some ways, just from the aggressiveness standpoint. He's not as slick with the submissions. He more takes a little bit longer to get to the submission, where Charles Oliveira, you're safe 1 second and then you're tapping out the next. With Raul Rosas Jr., it's much more of a long road to that submission, but it's a very dominant road. and he's very well versed and calm in grappling exchanges, which I like. It'll be a way for him to avoid damage over the course of his career. He does get hit on the feet, but if he can implement a strong grappling approach, he can avoid that damage. So Raul Rosas, especially being 20 years old, is another person that I think everybody should look out for going into 2025 and after that, 2026 and 27. Now, the next prospect going into 2025 that everyone should look out for is actually fighting this weekend against Paul Craig. Now, this is Bo Nickal, the Penn State wrestling sensation, one of the best collegiate wrestlers of all time, trains at American Top Team, 6-0, 28 years old, and I'd say he's probably got this fight and then one more for a ranked opponent. I know he's taking his career really slow. He probably could be fighting a Marvin Vettori right now if he wanted to, but he wants to take things slow. And because of how high profile his fights are, he's going to be making big jumps in competition in between fights. And so he needs growth in the gym is what he said multiple times, which I respect. I respect. 28 years old, 6 pro fights. He probably wishes that he had about twice as many of those right now. But in the UFC, he's beat Jamie Pickett, who's awful, Val Woodburn, who's awful and got cut, and then Cody Brundage, who's also not very good. Bo Nickal did look good in all of those fights. Cody Brundage lasted longer than most people thought he would at UFC 300. But overall, still, we knew how those fights were going to end. He's going up against Paul Craig, and I don't think this fight's going to be very different. It's very interesting to see, or it will be very interesting to see how Paul Craig's grappling and jiu-jitsu does against Bo Nickal's grappling. It's going to be very interesting, but Paul Craig finds a way to lose fights he should win. And just Paul Craig is just so inconsistent. He just finds ways to lose fights, and you can't pick a guy like that, especially against a guy who is so poised, experienced in high-level sport like Bo Nickal. I know he has 6 pro fights, 3 UFC fights, but he competed in stadiums during college wrestling, and he fought on the UFC 300 main card and came out and got a win, even though everybody, including myself, was talking about how much he didn't deserve to have that spot on the main card. So he's been in these big spots, and now he's on the main card at Madison Square Garden, fighting underneath John Jones. And he's fighting a guy who was ranked, who has a win over Jamal Hill and Magomed Ankalaev. It's a tough out, but I still think Bo Nickal comes out looking good. But this is, if he comes out winning this, he's probably getting a ranked opponent next, unless he decides to take it slower. There is my top 5 prospects going into 2025 to look out for. That is Carlos the Nightmare Prates, Bryan the Butcher Battle, Payton Talbott, Raul Rosas Jr., and Bo Nickal. Now, let me know your thoughts down below if you think that I missed somebody, or just let me know prospects that you are looking out for going into 2025. Thanks for watching this video. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment down below. It really helps us out a lot. If you want access to extra content and you want to support the channel further, please make sure to become a channel member by clicking the link down below or clicking the join button on our channel homepage. If you want more content from me, go check out my non-MMA podcast, What's Up Bro with Wyatt and Bo, in the link down below. Go watch this suggested video, and I'll see you next time.